Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey here, once again with another video on Arrow Season 6. So really, I wouldn't say since the beginning of Arrow, like since when it started, but you know, a couple of seasons in, one character that was rumoured and very much wanted by a lot of fans of Arrow to be included in the show, or just the universe in general, you know, fans of maybe the comics, but also like the Justice League show back in the day, was the Question. The Question character was one that a lot of people did want to see show up in the Arrowverse, and specifically Arrow, at some point. Now, throughout the show's history and the Arrowverse in general, there have been little hints to him, not necessarily like name-dropping him, but hints to his surroundings and history from the comics. But before we jump into like the status of like whether he will be on the show or not, I guess a lot of people might be wondering who is the Question. Not everyone will be familiar with him because he's not the biggest character. So yeah, who is the Question? Well, the Question is otherwise known as the real identity, so like the real life identity of Victor Sage, or Vic Sage, who is a vigilante protector of the city known as Hub City, which we have seen on Arrow before. So it is the city that Dinah Drake was in when Team Arrow went to recruit her when she was taking on whatever his name is, Sonar, whatever his name is. And it is also the place where Roy hung out before being blackmailed by the Calculator. So when Roy left in Season 3, he went off, he ended up in Hub City, and that's when he got involved with the Calculator. Now, the Question is actually a great martial artist and detective, and is also an investigative reporter in his real life as Victor Sage. The mask that he wears to disguise his face is, you know, it's a very unique one. It's pretty weird looking, but it is made of an experimental material called pseudoderm, which does give off a pretty cool look in my opinion. And it would be very interesting to see how they portray that in like live action. Now, he is driven by a deep personal quest for philosophical meaning, which has taken him through both objectivism and Zen, and in some other versions he is portrayed as like a paranoid conspiracy theorist, which I actually think would be a pretty, I think would be actually a pretty interesting concept to bring to Arrow if that's what they went with, like he's this conspiracy theorist and stuff like that, but I don't know, let me know what you think. Now, if you have ever watched Gotham, you know, that show that's on Fox, you know, it's got all the Batman characters without Batman, you may be familiar with a character known as Renee Montoya, who I think was in Season 1 and 2, I think. I might be wrong. I know she was in the show, I just can't remember when she last appeared. Now, in the comics, she actually took over the mantle of the Question following Vic Sage's death. Now, if anyone wants to know, he actually died of lung cancer. He wasn't killed in some amazing battle or anything. He got killed by something as simple as lung cancer. Now, in the comics, Victor Sage, or the Question might I say, has actually connections to Richard Dragon, who, as we should know, is actually a villain on Arrow this season, and I think will actually end up being the big bad, even though they're trying to make it out like Caden James is like the big bad. I think Ricardo Diaz, aka Richard Dragon, will end up being the big bad for the season. The only difference is that it's actually the previous version of Richard Dragon from the comics that actually trained the Question. There's two versions. There's Richard Drakonovsky, I think the first version, which is the one that trained the Question. He's the first version, so he's the one that was in the comics with the Question. And the one we have on the show is Ricardo Diaz. Now, he actually trained, obviously, the Question along with some other characters such as Oracle and the Huntress, if you want to get that little info drop there. But as I said, this was the previous version of Richard Dragon, not the Ricardo Diaz version we have this season, but they could work that in if they wanted to, if they were going to bring the Question in this season. Now, here's the time that we get into the details about the status of the Question and whether he's going to be appearing on Arrow or the Arrowverse at this point. So Mark Guggenheim was at this convention called Ace Comic Con, which was in New York, I think, and actually at this convention they had all the Justice League people there, apart from Ben Affleck. I think he was the only one that didn't rock up. But anyway, Mark Guggenheim, aka the executive producer of Arrow, was asked about the Question and the possibility of him appearing in the Arrowverse at some point. And this is what he had to say. I always bring him up. I always feel like that character would be a great fit with the tone of Arrow. Again, it's not our characters, it's DC's characters, and they've got other plans for the Question. I don't know what their plans are, but clearly they do have plans, otherwise we'd be using him. Guggenheim also was asked a question about Deathstroke, and he brought this up, and this is what he said about Deathstroke, which does sort of relate back to the Question part, and he goes, these are DC characters, we're just renting them, so we use the characters that they tell us we can use when we can use them, and we work around whatever limitations where that places us. For a time they were saying you can't use Deathstroke, and then that changed and we were able to have Slade Wilson back on the show, and now we're back to you can't use him. So if you've watched Justice League, you should be able to understand why they won't be able to use Deathstroke going forward for the current time at least. So there is our answer in regards to that, in regards to whether the question will be appearing on the Arrowverse anytime soon, which I guess is pretty disappointing on one hand. But I guess on the other hand, you have like the whole thought going through your head of like, what other plans is the question involved with for DC? Now, my first thought when I heard this was, well, it's not the comics, because the comics is like this own separate thing. It's really like separate media things, like either movie or TV, where all this like dispute happens. So if Deathstroke's got his own comic going at one point, it really shouldn't stop a TV series or a movie appearance by him stopping. So it's really movie and TV that battle. So the first thing that I thought that the question could be appearing in is actually the new Titans show coming up on the DC streaming service. So we had like the first look at Robin about a month and a half ago, something like that. And then we also had Hawk and Dove, the first look over the past like week and a half, 2 weeks or something like that as well. So that's hyping up a lot at the moment. I think we might get like a first trailer in January maybe, hopefully, or at least more first looks. So the question could be involved with that Titans show, which would be, as I said, pretty damn interesting and could make sense as to why maybe Arrow can't use him, because Arrow's in season 6, Titans is going to be in season 1, so maybe they want that season 1 to have a bang and a lot of really cool characters. So maybe that's why they've taken the question and put him in that show. And I guess the other thing is that maybe the question could possibly be appearing at some point in the DCEU in the near future. Maybe they're going to use him in like the next year or two. Obviously not the next year, I guess, because the only movie that's coming out in the next year is Aquaman, in basically exactly a year. So in the next 2 years, he could be appearing in a movie at some point then. But if I had to choose between those two, you would have to think the Titans DC show would definitely be where the question would be popping up if Arrow isn't able to use him. But thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it would be awesome if you could drop a like in the video to show your support. Let me know in the comments section down below, what are your thoughts on this? Are you disappointed that the question won't be appearing in the Arrowverse and like in the time soon, in like the near future? Are you disappointed about that? Or are you excited at the prospect that it could be appearing in maybe the Titans show on the DC streaming service? Let me know in the comments section down below all of your opinions. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. I'll catch you later, guys. Goodbye.